Declarations of conflict of interest?
None.
You okay with that, Bobby?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay. Approval of agenda?
Sure.
Okay. Adoption of minutes?
You have my vote?
Okay, move, second? Okay. Business arising from the minutes?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I did bring up at the last meeting at the neighborhood meetings. Frank, are you going to look at some kind of a schedule or something this fall, or are we going to have a future meeting about those neighborhood meetings? I know COVID-19 is posing some problems.
So that is right now, we're just waiting to see what comes out for clarification from the province.
From the Chief Medical Officer and her team?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Mayor?
Nope, no thank you.
Bobby, you got anything?
No, I'm great, thanks.
Okay, sir. Today, the reports are as follows. A, presentation from the Rugby Football Clubhouse Development Proposal. Security Patrol, July summary report we provided at the meeting. C, a verbal discussion on enforcement strategy of smoke-free place bylaw. And D, a verbal update on the capital projects. Is everyone okay with the reports for today's agenda?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Everyone's okay?
Yep.
Okay, today we're very fortunate to have representation from the, I think it's the Charlottetown Rugby, or is it the PEI?
Charlottetown.
Charlottetown, thank you. From the Charlottetown Rugby Football Association, very strong association, has grown in leaps and bounds and has a real strong organization on and off the field. I want to welcome the representatives from the Charlottetown Rugby Football Clubhouse, or the Rugby Association, to make a presentation on a proposed clubhouse development proposal. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming here today. It's a privilege and honor to have you here. What we're going to do, Blake, is we're going to turn the meeting over to you to give a presentation. I want you to take your time and please feel compelled to bring all relevant points up that you think that would be advantageous to your proposal. We have our staff here. Of course, we have Frank Quinn, Manager of Parks and Recreation, Christopher Drummond, who's in charge of programming. We have Nancy McMinn, who's responsible for all of our sports fields and playgrounds and anything to do with the outside venues and facilities. We have Peter Kelly, Chief Administrative Officer, Rory, who's in charge of all the technology in City Hall. Of course, the mayor is here, and we have Kevin Ramsey, Councillor, Bobby Duran, who's on the conference call. Who's missing?
Councilor Bernard, you can't make it.
Okay. The meeting is yours. Please take your time.
Thank you very much, Chair Tweedle. Appreciate the opportunity, Your Worship, Councillors, Parks and Rec Committee. We're really happy to be here at this stage to present some of the growth that we've experienced in the sport of rugby over the last number of years. It's grown from a very casual club sport to a much more organized sport that's looking now to increase infrastructure. And there's two pieces of facilities that we really want to discuss as part of this conversation. One is growth of field play, and the Park and Rec Department have been really constructive over the last number of years to both repair fields when there's challenges with the fields, but more importantly give us a home base, which is down at the Co-op Diamond. And previously we're migrating around the city without really static place to play or to have practices. So we're delighted to have that beautiful field down at Co-op that we've been fortunate to access. Part of the growth with the sport of rugby is to have better infrastructure, both for meetings and engagement, to have formal changing rooms that visiting teams can use and have a comfortable, safe place, especially for children when they need to change and get ready for going onto the pitch, that there's a safe, secure place for them to get changed and organized. So we want to talk today, we've got two representatives here with the sport of rugby. So Ryan Lloyd, who's with the PEI Rugby Union, he's the president of the union for the entire province. We've got Phil Gallant, who's a longtime supporter and actually one of the architects of the Mudman Club that evolved from the former Abbeys Rugby Club. And both will talk about what's happening in the sport of rugby provincially and then what's happening locally with the club in Charlottetown. Not just men's, but women's rugby, rookie rugby, and junior rugby development programs. All of these have experienced a lot of growth, and we feel we need more infrastructure to continue to support that. So we've got a short time. We want to be brief in our presentation and allow as much time as we can for questions. So let me hand it over to Ryan Lloyd, the president of the PEIRU, and he can talk a little bit about what's happening with the growth of the sport.
Okay.
Hi everybody, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Again, I'm Ryan Lloyd, I'm the president of the PEI Rugby Union. And basically what I want to talk about is the growth that we've experienced over the last 5 to 10 years in rugby on PEI. Up on the screen we have some of our numbers. I know it's hard to see, but what we're trying to show is that over the last 3 years leading into this year, we experienced an overall growth of about 80 to 90 participants. A large amount of that growth came from our rookie rugby program, which is our minor program. It's for children aged 5 to 12. Just 5 years ago, I ran a program here in Charlottetown, which was our only minor program that had 12 participants. And in 2018, we were up to 105. And then last year, we had a little bit of a drop off down to 91. And we were expecting to be back up in that 100 to 105 range this year before the pandemic hit. Our junior rugby programs run at about a capacity of 120 participants. Our senior rugby is in the range of 100 and has an opportunity to grow. And we have another small group of coaches, referees, and administrators.
Just push it back a bit.
Excuse me. We have some numbers up there for our high school participation. I want to be clear that the high school rugby on PEI is not a part of our club system or our union. They are run by the high school sport, but that those numbers there show that we have over 400 high school athletes on the island who are playing rugby that we are able to draw from for our participation numbers. Part of the reason that some of our numbers have plateaued recently is due to the lack of infrastructure that we have. The field time can pose a difficulty at times. Our rookie rugby in Charlottetown here, our minor program, has grown to 80 plus people, and trying to fit all of those people onto one field, especially now, is next to impossible. We have strong clubs in Charlottetown. Each club has about 50 people each. We have a women's club and a men's club. We're looking to work together as a province with those two clubs here in Charlottetown to try to grow the sport, grow our participation numbers up beyond what they are now, and having infrastructure, a clubhouse, and a field to call our own when we want to call it our own would be very helpful in doing that. So now I'll allow Phil Gallant from the Mudmen to come up and present a little bit further. Thank you all.
Again, thank you for having us here today. 15 years ago, I never thought I'd be standing here having this conversation. We were kind of, when the Mudmen came around, we had a lot of lull years there, probably about 15 years ago, where we were really struggling. We were kind of the squatters around Charlottetown, finding any piece of land we could play on, and a big part of that was we had no finances, nothing like that. We were running bare bones, and Frank and Chris have helped us a lot over the years to finally get that home of co-op that has been our place. Teams come from, we've had teams from Vancouver all over the place coming to tour here, and everybody talks about us having the most beautiful field in the Maritimes. Like right by the water. It's absolutely amazing down there. It's kind of a untapped gem that we're lucky to have and be able to use down there. And on a game day, there's you easily could see 200 people down there watching our games and interacting, and so the growth of the Mudmen alone, only about 15 years ago, we were getting 6 or 7 guys at practice, and over the years, gradually spending more time working on the development of like from the high school ages and recruiting guys and getting younger guys like to the club was a big part of that. And now we have a lot of young professionals, a lot of people in prominent careers in Charlottetown and all over the province doing great things. The uniqueness to try to get people to understand the difference with rugby is that term club that we are, because a lot of people, when we have these conversations, we talk about rugby as a sport, and we are very different with having that club atmosphere, because it is that it's a big family. We're connected with the CRFC. We have the Mudmen Old Boys, which we have about 50 members on top of the already numbers of Mudmen players we have, along with a women's Sirens team that is starting now, which is like women that can't really play competitively, but they want to come out and go for a run. So all in all, we have, with all of those clubs working together, we have over 200 members. And with that club, we try to focus a lot on community engagement, doing fundraisers, things like that, being at the forefront of things like the turkey drive and around Christmas, and like the food banks, and trying to do good things in the community as a club, supporting each other like a family and things like that. Throughout the whole year, not just about being that team atmosphere that we create. And we want to kind of have a home to be able to elaborate and do more with those things. The kind of vision that we have, now that we got to a point where we have finances and a solidified field and the extreme competitiveness, we're like, I don't want to be cocky, but we're probably the best team in the Maritimes. And the women are too. Like, men and women are the top of rugby in the Maritimes and possibly Atlantic Canada. We don't really get to play Newfoundland, but it shows like our little province of how amazing we are at this sport, and the growth, the rapid growth that it's showing. But our vision for this kind of facility that we want is to have the community involved in that, for it to be yes, rugby's a big part of it, but it to be for the community. Like, we see the opportunity down at Co-op of having more growth, of having more individuals going down there, enjoying that park and enjoying that beautiful area, whether it's improvement of the walking trails or collaborating with other sports or other activities that are down there. There's a lot of cricket players that go down there, like other individuals that are using the area, and we would love to be able to have that facility there and promote it for absolutely everybody that wants to go and be part of that. Make it more inclusive for anything that we might need. Because right now, like with COVID, one of the number one things that people need is space. That, like, they need that separation. Everything from somebody trying to have a meeting space or something like that, we want to be very inclusive with everything we can do with this possible project. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil, Ryan. So I know we're a little bit tight on time, Chair Tweel, but there's a few things I'll just touch on very quickly, and then I'm happy to answer questions. I think that might be the more constructive part of this process. So we talked about a field enhancement. We've been really fortunate that Parks and Rec has helped to support the current field that we have at Co-op. There's an upper field, so I look at this as a continuum over maybe as much as 5 or 10 years. I think the next phase of support that we'd like to request is probably to improve the upper field, which has a couple of slopes to it, and maybe level that off so it could be a place that could rookie rugby or practices could be safely played. Ultimately, over a longer horizon, I'd love to work with council to see if there's a possibility of adding a second gameplay field in that area. And that's space constrained at the moment, so that might be something over a long period of time to look at. The next step, probably in the short run, is to start some fundraising with the support of council to work with the city to enhance a physical piece of infrastructure. And we have looked at other sports such as soccer and the infrastructure that they have. We'd like to have something similar to that to support the growth of rugby. So we've done a little bit of preliminary work. We actually have some diagrams of potential layouts. These aren't done by architects. We could pull those up and show you some samples if you'd like. We do have some fundraising capacity. One of the things that Phil and Ryan talked about was the growth of alumni to the sport. So we've got 50 active players. We played, the old boys have played in Halifax. There's probably 60 to 70 people who come out regularly, old boys, and these are professionals in the community. It's that alumnus that we want to tap to help do the fundraising to grow an investment in a clubhouse. We'd like to do that in parallel with the city and possibly the province. So I know we had a short time. You've got a lot of agenda items to review today. I'm happy to answer any questions on the structure or the finances or how we might go about this. Our goal really is to present the continued growth of the sport, work with the city over at least a 5-year horizon to create the infrastructure that's going to help continue the growth.
I want to thank you three gentlemen for your presentation. Don't feel that you have to rush. This is a good introductory into the presentation that you've made. Of course, what your end goal is in terms of facility and long-term goal, of course, is a second field. I understand that. We did have meetings, Frank, I think it would have been a couple of years ago, that we sat down with representatives from Rugby, and we wanted to keep the dialogue going. I think it was illustrated at that time to keep working with the Rugby community to work towards that aim. I see some of the designs here in front of us. They look pretty intriguing, pretty exciting. I wonder, Blake, if we were to have a community meeting, would you gentlemen be okay with making a presentation to the community, of course respecting COVID-19, but nonetheless just to engage with the community, to present the proposal to the community so that anyone living in the immediate area would have any questions or concerns or recommendations, maybe they can be incorporated into the plan. So I wanted to bring that to your attention because I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, there was, you were looking at doing some different fundraising events, and of course the sale of alcohol was one of them, and unfortunately that didn't get off to a good start, and no reflection on the organization, but it just didn't get off to us. There's a couple of articles in the newspaper, and it just kind of went sour from there before the meeting was even held. So I want to be proactive, gentlemen. I very much respect the Rugby community and what you're attempting to do. It's not too often we have organizations that will come to City Hall saying, we're prepared to do some fundraising, we're prepared to put some money on the table, and we want to work alongside you. And I think that's tremendous. So my first question is, would you be open if the city was to call a community meeting, the committee called a community meeting to not only inform people that live in the immediate area, but to have them come out, maybe you can have a couple of diagrams up and some easels. They can come out and have a look. We can do an informal before the meeting and do a formal during the meeting. So that's my first question is, would you be open to that?
Yeah, I think it'd be entirely appropriate, and it'd be a necessary step in the process to be successful. We don't have engagement of the community, both the Rugby community, but the community at large that would be part of enjoying this facility, and we hope it would be a facility that would be enjoyed by all community members, especially those around the vicinity. So I think we wouldn't want to progress without the support of the community. So they'd be vital to the advancement of this project. I think before we did that, we'd want to have a little bit more work done and have some preliminary diagrams that might be done professionally as opposed to what we have here presented today. But we for sure would welcome that. In fact, at the time when there was a previous presentation to the community, I think there was a number of clubs at the time that were looking to enhance their environment by having a sale of goods at the facilities. We very quickly responded when the community said it wasn't something they're supportive of. It's not a big part of how we grow the sport. It creates a little bit of engagement, but we're more interested in building infrastructure to support a safe environment for the teams to organize than to...
Thank you, Blake. When do you think you would be ready to make that presentation of the community?
Well, from my perspective, I think what we'd really like to get from today is a green light. So if we have the support of Parks and Rec to move to the next level, I'm quite comfortable to do the fundraising that would be required to do this. We've got people to support, but to answer your question directly, as soon as we have something to present to the community that's a visual that they can get their head around, I think to go to any group without some organized documentation would probably just create unnecessary confusion.
No, that's not what I'm proposing. What I'm asking is, I want to engage with the community, right? I want to be proactive. My question is, when do you think you're ready to move to the next step so that we can make that presentation to the community? We would have two phases to the meeting. There would be the informal, which would be the beginning, and then the formal, which would be the second part of the meeting, where, more of a conventional type meeting, where, again, you three gentlemen make a presentation to the community, and then people that live in the immediate area would have an opportunity to ask questions, maybe bring up a couple concerns or bring up some recommendations. My whole motivation here is to be proactive.
Yep, so we're ready. I mean, the next step for us is to get support from council if we have that. One of the challenges is actually to get formal diagrams. So we have presented some that I've done myself, and they're rudimentary, but they're adequate to get pricing on. I think what I'd like to do is something that would be, approved by Parks and Rec in the city. And if we have that approval, then I can take it to the community. And we can adjust it based on the needs of the community. We may get requests for a lawn bowling facility, and we're happy to incorporate that.
Mr. Chair, Frank, maybe you want to speak first?
Just one comment, just with regards to that. So we'll work with actually the rugby group to make sure they come up with a preliminary design first.
Okay.
That fits in the space, because the worst thing is to go to the community and you don't know what you're actually doing.
Right.
So you need to know what sort of, where it's going to be placed, where it's going to go, what it's going to look like, what is some of the infrastructure, and we'll make sure their needs are all met.
Yeah.
Then when we hear concerns or we hear comments, this is great, can you do this, can you do that, then we would make those necessary changes. What Blake and his squad needs right now is is the city or is the committee interested in this for them to start the process of doing some fundraising and also then doing the preliminary working on the design.
And Frank, I think the chair of the committee understand that there's a process here. Could I ask, how long has this process been going on? How many years?
We've presented.
Looking at doing something like this?
I would say, from the time that we were practicing in a field that was not suitable, which was the bowl at Stone Park, and you'd have to scrape the field every time for glass and other debris, we've been down the Co-op diamond now for probably 4 to 5 years, let's say.
Okay.
And I think part of the goal through all that process was to, enhance the infrastructure. We have a beautiful field, and the city's been very supportive. The physical structure is probably about a 3-year process since it's been, envisioned as something that could be a reality, and that we've got the capacity to kind of advance.
And Blake, Macadam Field is a rugby field. Is that part of your Mudman rugby plan, or is that?
So we don't have access to that field. It's owned by UPEI, and it's very restrictive, the access to that location.
So do you try to negotiate with the university to use that field, or you're just staying?
Yes,
You must know, Ryan.
Yeah, so to answer your question, they've gone through a process over the last number of years where they do work to Macadam Field in the spring, and then they close it until the end of August when the university rugby season starts and whenever Holland College football plays. Because what was happening was whenever community groups were using it through the summer before that, the field would be in rougher shape whenever they got to the start of the season, and once you get to the end of the university and college seasons in late October, early November, the field was unplayable.
Okay. So it's out of the question of using that as part of the
right now
rugby club
yeah.
infrastructure.
At this point, with the usage that we'd be looking for, I don't think they're ready to have us there.
And Mr. Chair, I think we all agree that there's a need to go forward with what Blake and his group are proposing. And I like the whole concept of how we're doing it in stages. I think Blake and I have spoken at different events that were hosted by the Charlottetown Rugby Club to try to get this moving. Ryan's dad, Mike Lloyd, I can credit Mike Lloyd for being the initiator of rugby on Prince Edward Island, because he brought it here and got it into the school system, and it's at a point where his sons are now part of the organization, so really appreciate that Ryan's here. And Phil, I know that you've been, doing the behind the scenes and trying to move the numbers. So the numbers with high school rugby and your numbers, is that a consolidated number, or do we have two separate numbers?
Two separate numbers there right now, yeah.
So would we be looking at 600 if you combine the two?
Yeah, I would say so. Around
Okay,
that.
and that's island-wide. Okay, and Mr. Chair, just the last question. If you look at the Halifax Rugby Club, I think they're based out of, is it Goresbrook Park?
Yeah.
Is that where they're?
Yeah.
Down by the St. Mary's? Do they have a facility? Like, do they have
So there's
a
some-
change room, or do they use St. Mary's?
They use St. Mary's. There's several clubs in Halifax. I actually coached St. Mary's University Club. We practiced on that field, and we'd always use the facilities of St. Mary's, which is beautiful.
Yeah,
And
because
right
it's just across the
street.
road. Yeah.
Yeah, but they do have a Wanderers grounds now, which is used
Yeah.
for football and for rugby. They've hosted rugby events. But there are several clubs and with varying facilities.
Yeah.
We looked at a model, we kind of envisioned a model, kind of what Fredericton uses over there. They bought some land kind of in the swampy area, but they partnered with beach volleyball and I think cricket or whatever, and they control the facility, but the other sports are part of what they're doing too. And that's kind of what we were looking at also, is the inclusion of how can this benefit a lot of different variations, whether it's sport and social or like if there's ever beach volleyball or anything, you know what I mean, something else that could be part of what we're doing, everything. And the community involvement, like we wanted to have those neighbors involved in this whole process, because one of the bonuses that I took from the last community presentation when we were looking at the sale of goods was the concerns. It was great to get to know some of those people, and we took the appropriate measures, and when we heard that they were unhappy, we just pulled the chute on that idea, because we said we want them down the field, we want them enjoying it, we want them to become part of this. And I know, like my uncle lives down there, and he's a hard-nosed guy, and I know a lot of the concerns down there, and the minute that there's some form of change or something being built, they're concerned about taking away the scenery or the view and things like that. And we want to address every single concern that they possibly have, and try to please as many people as possible. And with some of these images that if Blake just like does them on a computer, they can look very intimidating if they look very big and very out there. So the idea is if we get that green light and spearhead an appropriate thing to take to them, that it simplifies a version that kind of makes them happy, works with us. Because my vision is to have them down there being part of this, like having maybe a little deck on the front that people could come down and enjoy, having something that could be part of the whole community.
Yeah. So just trying to clarify, I know, so Goresbrook Park uses facilities at St. Mary's, but the field, who takes care of the field? Halifax Rugby Club?
It's probably part of the city, I would assume.
Okay, so the city takes care of it. And for what you're looking at Queen Elizabeth Park, you're looking at the main field and an additional field?
Well, I think what I'd like to do is work with the club and with the city to maybe have a multi-year, like a 10-year plan. So if the sport continues to grow, we've got a beautiful main field.
Right.
It's nice to have concurrent activities occurring, especially in a COVID time. Is there some potential in a long-term plan to have a second field, a second playable field? In the short run, there is a little area up, it's a sort of a two-tiered area that we'd like to
Up near Vista Lane.
level that as just an additional spot to either stretch out or warm up or have younger, like youth rugby. So it's an additional next phase of facility. But I think the goal that I would have for the club is have a longer term vision and work with the city to achieve that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Mr. Chair.
And just to comment on that too, that that's something we have discussed, this expansion of fields.
Sorry, gentlemen. Go ahead,
But
Frank.
we are limited in the space there, so we have one now, and we've said, we'll work to see what the next step can be. Until thing changes with the park spaces, as Councillor Ramsey knows, it's in his ward, it's utilized pretty.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say,
It's
Frank.
utilized, so, but
Just one second.
we're always open for discussion, and we've had frank discussions, I guess, pardon my pun.
Before I turn it over to Councilor Ramsey, I just want to, for the record, is that our Parks and Recreation Department has worked collaboratively over the last 2 or 3 years with the organization. We made, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, we made some great enhancements to the field. We've had good communications with the group, and I think we made some vast improvements. So,
Yep, for the record, yeah, absolutely. I think
so
it's
from-
been longer than 3 years. It's been multi-year,
Yeah,
probably
so-
25-year relationship.
That's right,
so.
but I just want to, for the record, I mean, I want to credit our staff, Christopher and Frank and Nancy. We have worked extremely collaborative. We made some improvements, and that's why, when visiting teams come to Charlottetown and they go down to that venue in Queen Elizabeth Park, they say, wow, what a beautiful field, beautiful scenery. So I believe, from where I sit, the process has already begun. That's safe to say. Mr. Ramsey, you're on.
Thank you. I'm the representative for that area, and I was at that meeting when we had it at the West Road building up there, when he was trying to sell alcohol for fundraiser, which was a good idea, but you know how the residents were. In the last week or so, we're doing work on the park down there for the walkway and everything, and I've been getting phone calls, people are wondering what's going on. So I'll be honest with you and brutal with you, that they don't want a whole lot of things happening in that park. Now, what size would this building be, Blake, and where would it be situated if it went ahead?
So I think there's two elements. The first thing, in the size of the building, I think that's something that obviously we'd have to work with Parks and Rec, and it's the city's land. So we've looked at the facilities both at Parkman and the West Loyalty Soccer Complexes. They're about, I think, 1,600 square feet, so 32 by 50 if I'm not mistaken. The limitation that those facilities have, which are pretty identical, is changing rooms. So if you looked at incorporating changing facilities, and that's what we have a diagram up on the board right now, you're probably looking at adding another 1,000 square feet. So I don't have any size expectations. If it's 500 square feet, we'll work with 500 square feet. If we were to present an optimal plan, I think it's something less than 3,000 square feet. And one of the diagrams that we did present, and it's hard to find good renderings, but one of the thoughts was, is there a way to incorporate the structure into the berm so that it lowers the sight line, reduces disruption, place it behind the tree line. So the last thing we want to do is create anything that's not beneficial to the community. And I think there's ways that a professional architect could help to design that, also enhancing bleacher capacity so that field can be viewed. But I think that there's sight lines that can be considered. Square footage, if we want to include the changing rooms, we're probably looking at 2,000, 2,500, 2,800 square feet.
And you want it close to the rugby field?
I think we're flexible. So there is existing washroom facility, storage area. If there's a way to incorporate into that building, it'd be ideal because it already has water lines. The challenge there would be the sightline disruption, especially to the residents who would live up above the second practice field. So there's other locations that would be more concealed.
Yeah, because as Nancy and Frank and all the staff know, even when there's a tree in the way down there for those people on Vista Avenue, like one lady, for example, was even down there cutting trees down herself. I mean, through the years, because like her view was being taken away. So I'm just putting it out there. Like I think it's a great idea, but the residents do not want a whole lot down there.
And to Chair Tweel's comment, I think we do have to present, if we don't have the endorsement of the community, obviously we don't want to proceed, and you won't allow it. So,
exactly.
But we want to be organized when we do that.
And I agree with that too. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, so, thank you, Kevin. I'd like to turn the meeting over to our CAO, Mr. Kelly. Peter?
Just one thing, based upon your 2,500 square feet, give or take, you're around $500,000-$600,000. What portion of that do you guys hope to fundraise?
So I guess I haven't priced it. I was going to do that, and I thought I'd just wait. I estimated the costing to be about $150 a square foot. So if you use 2,800 square feet, it's about $450 is the construction cost.
And I use current rates around $225 our current construction rates.
Even with, it's probably not a very refined interior, but I accept that. I didn't quote it. So if it's $200, so I guess what we've looked at.
It's $500,000, let's say, what portion would you guys want to fundraise?
So I think my understanding of the engagement with the city, it's difficult to raise funds in this environment, but if we could come up with a bilateral relationship with the city and the province and do a third of the fundraising, that's a commitment we'd make. And if I look at the time horizon, 3 years ago, I think we could have fundraised faster. I've done a number of fundraising initiatives with different organizations, including the Red Cross. We did $1 million fundraising for the new facility. I think there's approaches that we can use to raise that kind of capital. It's a really constrained environment, and businesses are not a reliable source of donations. So I think our horizon has to be pushed out because of that. But optimally, it'd be about a third of the construction cost is what we would take on.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Bob, do you have any questions?
No, I have the report in front of me there, Councilor Twill. Everything looks good. No questions from me.
Okay, thank you, Bob. So what I would like to propose is to go to the next stage. The next stage to have a community meeting. So Blake, and gentlemen, if you could kind of work that out with Frank and Christopher and Nancy to come up with appropriate time for a community meeting when you're ready to make that presentation. So is it okay if we leave it with your organization to make that determination with our senior staff in Parks and Recreation? And when you feel the time is right, then what we'll do, this committee will host a community meeting. We'll make sure that people in the immediate area are properly notified. We'll want them to come to the meeting, and I want to break it down once again into two components. One is the informal part of the meeting, where you're spread out. We got conceptual designs, maybe in some easels or up on the wall, and Mrs. Smith walks in and she sees you, for example, or Jack McKenna says, "What's this here?" Well, this is what we're doing here. This is exactly what we're doing here, Wilfred. We're trying to do this here. So then, by the time they get to the formal part of the presentation, half of those questions or issues would have been already aired. It's just a suggestion, but can I leave it with yourself and our senior staff, and then please work out the details? And I can tell you that as the chair of this committee, I think I speak for all the committee members, we're ready to go to a community meeting.
Yeah, could I just, I think, go back to what Frank said earlier. I think we want to look at the plan before it goes to a community meeting. And I prefer that it would come back here with some more details, because in your conclusion, like, you put this deficit, the implementation of this facility, the City of Showtown will allow for our goals of strategic growth and investment for all parties. So I'd like to see those strategic goals, and before we go, like, I think we should do a dry run before we go to the public. And the reason I say that, Mr. Chair, because it says our facility will include additional sports field. Like, it's pretty tight there where it is now. You're sandwiched between two baseball fields, right?
Yep.
One in the north, one in the south. And to the west or the east, you have Vista Lane, and there's that grove of trees, and you've heard of all the talk about protecting trees, whether in private or public property. So there are a lot of issues or variables we have to discuss. And I would like to see, Mr. Chair, if they would come back here and go over it with us first. Because you look at accessible washrooms, a canteen area, ample seating for spectators, shaded areas for hot summer and rainy cold days, a refreshment kitchen. Like, it's a great plan, but I'd like to see a footprint with architectural drawings.
So,
Okay,
Your
Mr.
Worship,
Quinn?
and Chair, yeah. So we'll work with them, and like we don't want to go and spend a whole bunch of money on design and whatnot first. So we'll go and do a bit more preliminary, have a bit more of a layout design, like I said, so we can bring it to the community to make sure their buy-in is. So we'll work with them to try to get things moving as quickly as possible. There will be some restrictions and limitations due to this COVID.
That's fine. We'll work around that.
So we'll work around it. So part of that might be that part of the meeting might have to be virtual, FaceTime, that people can.
Virtual, but Frank,
I mean, part of it depends on the numbers, because you don't have.
I think that we have access to the West Royalty Community Center. We can utilize the gymnasium. Certainly, respecting COVID-19 and spacing requirements and restrictions. I think that'd be a good venue to be able to space people out. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's a good venue to host a meeting of that nature. So can I leave that with your organization and with our senior staff and Parks and Rec, and of course our CAO, and then if you want to bring it back to the committee, fine. I mean, you don't want to spend a whole lot of money. Again, personally, I'd like to get it out to the community as soon as possible.
But Mr. Chair, I know we're all supportive, and I appreciate that. I think these three gentlemen are sensing that we are supportive. I just want to make sure that when we open the curtains to the show, that we're all on the same page. And what I'd like to recommend is that if we have some available operational money in our budget to provide some seed money for them to look at a conceptual design of how it will fit into that field. Because I think you're going to need more than just someone with a draftsperson's background. I think you'll need a rendition, a rendering of the
Your
product.
Worship, clarification, Mr. Kelly.
Although it's a great idea, Worship, as you know, funds are tight in the current budget, and so this division department does not have extra money for that purpose, Your Worship. So we have to maybe find another way, but I just want to make it clear that there are no extra funds to go down that road, Your Worship.
Well, yeah, then I'd like to take it back to the Finance Committee and see if we can find something to help out with this.
Well,
But we need a ballpark of what that cost would be. Your Worship.
okay, you know what, folks? Again, I'm gonna try it one more time.
We're happy to work with the
Why
department.
don't go, the organization, meet with our senior administration at Parks and Rec, Nancy, Christopher, Frank, Dean Worth, Jackie McKinnon, everyone in Parks and Rec. Just, you guys come up with a game plan, and then when you're ready, let's go to the community and let's engage effectively with the community so we can present a good plan, as you said yourself, Blake, that would be phased in over a 10-year period. Over a 10-year period, this is phase one. This is phase two. This is phase three. This is phase four. So they get a clear picture and a clear understanding of where your association and organization wants to go over the next 10 years. And again, that's being respectful.
Yep.
And it's being very conscientious about the community, and we're not only looking for a buy-in here, Blake. We're looking for some enthusiasm in the community, saying, "Wow, this would really be advantageous for our community, and we want to be a part of that." And we got some of our own suggestions, some of our own recommendations will even make it that much better.
We're completely on board. In fact, we'd love to start now. I think we're ready to start now. So we'll work with the department. They've been excellent to work with. I think if we can get support to do a rendering, to do a community meeting, we'll do that. From my perspective, I'd love to do it this fall.
Yeah,
Depends
well, we
on
are going to do
how
it this
quickly
fall.
we can organize somebody to do the rendering. And if there's capital budget, great. If there's constraints and we can find a way to make that contribution, as long as we have some assurance that this might proceed.
Okay.
So if we have that confirmation, we'll find the funds to get the initial work done. Maybe we can credit that toward the future investment.
Sure. So,
Find the money, Frank.
Frank, just respect the process, Frank, and we appreciate what the mayor says. I'm sure he's got money in the mayor's budget.
We can help out.
He can open up the check.
We can help out.
And open up the checkbook. Anyway, on a serious.
Has to go through the grants committee.
Yeah, on a serious note, thank you, gentlemen. I want to thank you, gentlemen, not only for presenting here today, but all the work that you've done over the past years to bring the sport of rugby up to this level. Your work hasn't gone unnoticed. It's widely recognized, and I want to credit you with your professionalism and how you do collaborate with our staff here in Parks and Rec. And I've always heard good things, good positive things, and our door is always open at the senior administrative level and at the elected level. I think that's safe to say, Kevin, Councillor Ramsey. Bob, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, you said everything, Councillor Clear. Let's just go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, Councilors.
Enjoy your day.
Worship. Yep,
Enjoy your weekend, I guess.
we will. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Okay, bye now. Okay, Frank's gone. It's a good presentation, good discussion.
Yep, we're on security patrol.
We're on security, July summary report provided at meeting. Wait.
It's on your desk, Mr. Chair.
Okay? Okay, Frank, we're going to move to the next stage in reports B. Security Patrol, July summary report. We do have some information on a one-pager here. Now, who's carrying this? Is Nancy or yourself?
Well, both Nancy and I will, but I'll
Okay.
just start it off. So it's the front page and the back page. If you flip it over, you'll see. So that just details incidents that have been reported to Nancy, and these are the more I guess, major ones. A lot of minor ones that Nancy would get on a weekly basis or a daily basis. I'm not sure it's a weekly yet, Nancy? Daily basis. They just make us aware of things. So these are sort of the things they feel that are worthy of putting into a report. So
It's been quite a quiet summer compared to normal.
I'm sorry?
Much quieter summer than normal.
Okay. Okay, Nancy? Thank you. So you, gentlemen, you have the information in front of you. What I'd like to do now is open the floor for any questions, any concerns. Kevin?
No, I'm good with it.
Mr. Mayor?
It's great to see that.
Bobby, I don't know if you have the information in front of you. Do you have any questions or concerns?
He doesn't.
No, I don't. No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Can we make sure that Bobby gets this one pager?
Just send me a text of it.
Yeah, well, I don't have it here right now, but I.
Okay, but
Yeah.
please make sure Bob gets it. Okay,
And Terry, too.
right. Okay. Report C, verbal discussions on enforcement strategy of the smoke-free places bylaw 2018-1. Who's taking this one?
So I will, yeah, so,
Okay.
just one moment here. So I guess the biggest thing, there has been a number of concerns brought up during council and during other meetings that, there appears to be people not adhering to the smoke-free places bylaw. And one of the areas that has been identified appears to be Victoria Park a lot of times. And we know ourselves, we walk through there, you'll see someone sitting on a bench smoking and whatnot. So we've sort of looked at it. We have the bylaw, it's been in place for about a couple of years. And there is, if you look at the bylaw, there is a component of it that there is an enforcement part of it.
Yep.
Having said that, that does involve police. And we're going to work with police to try to see if we can come up with some type of an approach that will help with enforcement. But along with that, we felt there was a need to also identify what signs do we have in place. Right now we put signs up and they might be looked at in 3-4 years time. But they could be vandalized, they could be faded, they could be that kind of thing. So I've got staff right now that went down and identified all the signs that are in Victoria Park.
Yep.
And there is a fair number, but are they in the most appropriate place? So
Okay.
we're going to identify what type of signs, and it might be, I know Nancy will say a lot of times you don't see the signs for the signs because there's so many signs. So we're going to look at is, okay, where do you need the 12 by 18 signs? Where do you need a smaller sign? Is there some type of things like maybe a sticker gets put on just stuck onto a bench saying, no smoking? Because that's what we've identified. A lot of times it's not right down on the boardwalk. It's actually, but I'm saying a lot. I'm not saying it doesn't happen there.
Yeah.
But there's other places where people are off, say around the active transportation roadway there, sitting up on the hill, and you'll see a number of butts. The biggest area they identified was from the playground to Kiwanis Dairy Bar. Appears to be where the area on that inside park side, on those benches, appears to be where it's happening the most.
It's prevalent.
There is other spots, but I know it doesn't appear to happen as much around the ball fields.
I can tell you that in the playground, there is smoking. There is smoking that's taking place. I appreciate what communications has done in recent weeks, trying to use social media, but from where I sit, unless we have some level of consistent enforcement, if we don't have the consistent enforcement, then we're not going to get compliance. So I think we need to take it to another level. And signage, I think we've done press releases over the years, we've done PSAs, we've reminded the community, please comply with the no smoking bylaw. I think we've done a good job, but now we need to take it to the next level, and there has to be some type of consistent enforcement. And when I talk about consistent enforcement, I'm talking about 7 days a week. 7 days a week during the day, during the mornings, during the mid-mornings, the afternoons, evenings. And we've got to have that consistency, because right now we have absolutely no compliance. Cigarette butts are all over the place, and I think that's a real shame. Particularly when we have the crown jewel in Victoria Park. So, Peter, I'm going to ask you this: is it possible? I know when we shut down the inside lane for active transportation, every year Public Works gives out those great big signs at the end of Brighton Road and
Kent Street.
So to administer a bit of shock therapy, why don't we take those signs back out and just plaster absolutely no smoking, so that when people are driving down to the park, they see the great big 4x8 sign, and there's no way they're going to miss it, and it's flashing. And it's flashing. And I think it's time to do a bit of shock therapy, plus the enforcement. So, would you please take that under consideration?
I'll see if the signs will be available for a period of time.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chair, could I just go back to the smoke-free places bylaw?
Sure.
Under the definitions, part 2, subsection 2.3, recreation and sport facility property means all city-owned or operated indoor, outdoor recreation facility properties, including but not limited to community centers, sports fields, sports courts, parks, playgrounds. So I look at the report from the security. They mentioned 3 parks. There are 2 parks in the downtown, Hillsborough Park or Hillsborough Square and King Square. Over the last several weeks, there have been couches put out on the square. There have been hammocks put on the square. There is smoking of just regular cigarette smoking and cannabis smoking. And we have parents that are trying to revitalize these neighborhoods. Why don't we have any spot checks down there on those parks?
They would have SWAT checks, but
But-
what we do, if you're having concerns specifically to particular parks, we highlight it, we send it to them, and they increase the surveillance for those particular areas. So
Could I add Hillsborough Square and King Square?
Yeah, no problem.
Because, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I received a call this morning from a young mother, has 2 children. She takes her children, before this facility started to operate in the lower part of the 500 lots, they would take their children out into the park, the square, teach them how to ride bicycles. Now when they go out, some days there's a sofa, other days there's a hammock. They got the picnic table close to the lamp post so they can plug in their music. It's not a park anymore for families. It's really, it's shocking that some of the families are exposed to what they're seeing with their kids, so they're not going there. And I just, again, if we have security, and Frank, I know we're not covering the 150 park spaces, because you said there are 150 green spaces in the city, maybe 58, 60 playgrounds. Well, this is a playground and a square, and it's in the 500 lots. So, could you please just identify, and Mr. Chair, the smoking is not just your regular smoking, it's cannabis now because it's legalized. But if you open a beer in a park, you can be charged for
Illegal possession.
what is it?
Illegal possession.
Illegal possession. I don't know what the laws are for smoking cannabis because it's an acceptable substance. But
You know, you raise a good point.
so I just wanted to put that. I want to put that on the.
But at the same time, Mr. Chair, if I may, and I'm going through these reports that's from the security people, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's everything in there from falling asleep in the car and everything, and there's not one thing in there, like we beat this up every month about smoking in the parks and all that, but there's still nothing in this report saying that they stop somebody from smoking or find someone from smoking. So is our security people walking by, or what are they doing?
So just to provide a comment there, Nancy has, when we received a recent email, I spoke with Nancy, and she was going to be speaking with the Park Patrol crews. It's become almost a norm. You see someone doing it, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But we've said now there is a smoke-free places bylaw. We want to know where it's taking place, how often it's taking place. So Nancy has notified them, and we will be closely monitoring. So hopefully we will see where is the problems happening. How many times do you have to speak to them about this?
Yeah, but Frank, I respect all that, but at the same time, this smoking bylaw come in the 12th day of March 2018. And as Councillor Trio, and I agree with him, every month he's up talking about smoking in the parks and all that stuff. But there's a report right there from these people that were paying money that are not, there's not one smoking violation on that.
Well, they might-
So either we've got the wrong crew working security, or they're afraid to talk to people about smoking. I don't know,
Well, there's a couple things at play here. I do want to come back to the squares. It's not just 2 squares, as I understand it. It's the 4 squares. And what's happening is, it's not just smoking cigarettes. It is smoking marijuana, it's marijuana, and there's other drugs too being involved in the parks. And like I'm going to come back to it again. We've got to start having enforcement and compliance. And we just can't say it's a casual thing, because it's not a casual thing. The parks are for all demographics, whether it be our senior citizens, whether it be our young families, again, for people of all ages to enjoy. And it's not for one group to set up shop and lay claim to saying, oh, this is where we're gonna party and do drugs and everything else that goes with it. So I think we've got to look at those four historical venues, those facilities, those heritage parks. We made a lot of investment over the years into these particular parks. We've had community meetings. We brought back playground equipment in Connaught Square. We've gone above and beyond. These four parks are the envy. When you talk to people outside in the periphery of the city, they point out to the resources and infrastructure that's gone into these four squares. They'd like to have them out in their own. Yeah. They'd like to have them out in their own communities, and I agree with them. So I think what I'd like to ask staff is, could you please take back our concerns, formulate a game plan, meet with the security people. Look, if there's not enough resources there, then you got to come back and tell us, so we can bring this to City Council and start to have the rubber hit the road. So the status quo, I keep saying this, the status quo in this instance is not working. So.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask one other? Under Part 6, penalties for non-compliance. Any person who violates any provision of this bylaw is guilty of an offence. So can our security services issue summary offence tickets? We have to call the police, right?
They're not, unless they're sworn in as special constables, which are not to, they have to call police. And that's why in here you'll see the call police, call police, call police.
Yeah, but
how do we make it work? Just call police all the time?
That's what's here, or if we have our cadets down there and they're given the authority to issue tickets.
But
through the province.
The problem with that, Peter.
No, it comes from
But the
police.
problem with that, Peter, is when a call goes into police prioritize the calls. They could be working on a domestic dispute. They could be working on God knows what. And in the overall scheme of things, that call might not be addressed, or it might be addressed 2 or 3 hours later, and by that time, they're long gone. So I appreciate what you're saying about phoning the police, and it should be registered with the police, but at the same time, I think we've got to look at our whole security mechanism, how it functions, what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, what resources they have at their disposal, especially from a legal perspective, and we've got to change it up. We've got to change it up, and we've got to have, I go back to Victoria Park. Victoria Park, to my mind, is the equivalent of a national park. Okay, there's thousands of people there there on a daily basis, and we've got to have the proper resources. We just can't go with a skeleton crew on Thursday evening, Friday evening, Saturday evening, and Sunday evening. It's just not working. But it's just not working.
But Mr. Chair, the security that we have is for Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, or Nancy, it's for all parks, not just for Victoria Park.
No, two separate securities, Philip.
7 days a week park patrol that goes around the city and reports concerns. And then there's Thursday to Sunday, there's 2 people that are stationed at Victoria Park. So there's 2 people plus the 1 person 7 days a week.
Yeah, I think, that we really look at the whole security issue, not just for, there are parks out there, as the Councillor Tweedle said, there's a lot of concentration on the downtown, but you have Mulberry Park, you have parks out in Co-op Diamond, there's a lot of activity that goes on out there too.
You're right.
So we're just concentrating our resources on
Most of them.
Thursday to Sunday on Victoria Park, which is great, but we need to make sure that
No, park patrol goes.
I know that. But
And if we have any concerns addressed, say if Councillor Ramsey said, I heard there's gonna be parties down there, or there is those graduation parties, then all of a sudden, they're down there a lot.
Yeah.
And then that party will be moved on to Mulberry. and then there's a complaint, and then they concentrate more on that. But we only have one person.
Sort of like the crows leave from Victoria Park and they go up to Brighton.
So just on the last, so the enforcement, if we looked at other jurisdictions, again, go to Fredericton, when they do their park patrol, do their security or park patrol have?
Well, I think you asked a good question.
Do we
Mr.
know?
Kelly?
Again, we'll come back and.
No, but, no, Peter, if you don't mind me asking, what do they do in Halifax?
It's a combination of policing in some areas and then patrol in other areas.
But those
And
patrols,
staff
can they
patrol.
issue tickets?
They issue
Somebody-
tickets?
I don't have the information right now, which I'm.
Could we find that out?
Yeah, let's find that out.
Yeah, let's-
I mean, we can go down
Chair,
the
the
road.
reason I
yes.
say that, we're having this issue in planning where construction is taking place without permits, and we have, the only way that, our only recourse is to take them to court. Well, to take them to court, sometimes it's easier just to move on. If you can issue a ticket to say it's a $248 fine for not getting a permit to build this accessory building, then that is,
Easy to do.
that's an easy implementation.
Well,
The same as it would for this.
That's the same thing that, you know, you mentioned planning, protection of the bylaws, water runoff, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the onus is put back on the grieving adjacent property owner, and they're supposed to take some big conglomerate to court? Come on.
Okay,
Come on.
thank you, sir.
Anyway,
Okay, let's find out more information on that.
yeah. And a jurisdictional scan too, please.
We'll be here all day.
Pardon me?
I said, or we'll be here all day on this one.
Right. Okay. Bob, did you have anything you'd like to add to that discussion?
No, that was great, Mitchell, thank you.
Okay, thank you. D, verbal update on capital projects. Guess that's you, Frank?
Yes, yeah.
Okay?
Just 1 second. And I'm just going to provide a high-flying overview.
Okay.
And just to keep things on track, if you have sort of questions you want on a particular project, you can sort of ask me afterwards and I can give you more details, so we don't bog things down. Just where we're at right now, I have a list here. The Heritage Squares, right now Nancy's in the process of getting the landscaping done along the pathways that were done last year. The summer's been so hot, we've waited till later to do it, so the grass will actually grow. With regards to the
I'm
Victoria
sorry,
Park-
I don't mean to interrupt, but at the last meeting I brought up Canot Square. Will that mean, Nancy, there'll be some flowers planted down there, or just a little flower bed? Is that what you're talking about?
No, so
No.
just, this is a capital project, so that thing there, Nancy and I haven't had a chance to talk on it yet, so
Okay.
when we have an
Okay.
opportunity to talk on it, we will. It's been, these are capital projects. So
Okay,
this
I'm
is-
sorry.
Yeah,
My apologies.
Your worship, yeah,
My apologies.
sorry, Chair. So this is just the landscaping, so these are project approved. Our Victoria Park projects that we're working on there, we're proceeding with all those projects right now. On Monday, I believe, they're going to be doing the repairs on the boardwalk that was damaged by the storm surge. So underneath the gravel and the landscaping, so that is going to be taking place over the next couple of days, starting Monday.
Okay.
Which is good to get done.
Sure.
There's other projects, the Frank Papali Bridge replacement right now is on hold till we find out what's happening with the swale. We'll be discussing later on the Centennial Parkway pathways. We did go out to tender on that, and we'll be reviewing those later on. And same with the Mulberry Park parking lot.
Yep.
That one went out to tender as well. The Allens Creek Ewan platform replacement. Nancy right now is working with an architect to get a design done on it. So hopefully we'll be getting that out here in the near future to get a quote to do that work. City Diamond, the light poles and fixtures are up and running. The lights look amazing. If anyone's been down
They do.
there, it is
Right on.
it is the top of the line.
I want you to know, and you're right, Frank, it is top of the line. We have received nothing but rave reviews about the work that's done both on the field and with the lights. It's fantastic. It's probably one of the nicest fields now, I would argue, in the province of Prince Edward Island.
Well,
Well, it is.
Yeah,
It
well,
is.
the one thing just on your comment there,
Yeah.
Chair Twill, is that the upgrades to the infield were done and everything. There's been a few deficiencies with regards to rocks that are coming up,
Sure.
so we're addressing those.
Yeah.
Also, with the extreme dry weather, the actual material, the soil material, hasn't compacted like it should. So hopefully with a bit of rain, that will start to pack.
Okay.
But like you said, the field will get better, the infield and the outfield will get better as we get some rain.
Frank, if you don't mind, it's pretty bare around the periphery of the ball diamond, not the infield play, but on the outside. Would you consider hydro seeding?
This is part of the actual work that's left to be done. With all the dry weather we have, even hydro seeding in this dry weather will not take as well.
Okay.
So that's left as one of the items left to be done.
Okay.
So the other projects that we are working on right now, Queen Elizabeth Park Pathways, that upgrades has been awarded, and they're looking at, we're going to have a site meeting, I believe, on Monday, so that work will be starting in the very near future. We'll be sending out a PSA just to indicate that there is work taking place, but anyone that's asking questions about it, it is going to make the pathways fully accessible, which
No, they're all full in agreement with it, Frank,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Eric, did we talk one time about moving the gazebo back while we're doing that, or was that just a?
Right now, we're moving correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, we're moving the actual pathway in front of the gazebo.
Oh, in front of
around
it. Okay.
And we will be looking
In
at
front of it, whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
and we'll be looking at the gazebo, how we address that in
Yeah.
the shoreline
Okay.
there. That's another project.
No, everybody's very pleased when I told them what we're doing there.
So with regards to a couple of the Wrights Creek Bridge Renewal project, I'm working on getting some preliminary designs right now.
What's that one, Frank?
The Wrights Creek Bridge Renewal.
Yes.
So right now I'm working on the preliminary designs. It's a little more of a complicated project. It's the one we received ICIP funding. It's a large project. The estimated cost is that we have budgeted is 1.3 million. So it is a big project. But that's one.
What does that include?
What's
Replace
that?
the bridge. To replace the bridge.
I thought it was around 500,000. What?
The city's contribution will be a third of that. So-
500,000, the city's contribution.
The city's contribution is around 400. I don't know the exact number here, but the total project is estimated to be 1.3 and change. It's a huge project, and it's a complicated project too, because you're working with an older bridge that has some, so right now we've hired a consulting company.
And that's not administered through Public Works, is it? Bridge is not Public Works?
This bridge, the roadway ends, and the
Yeah.
actual bridge is part of the park.
Part of the park, so it's
So-
not Public Works.
It's part, I wish it was, but it's not.
No, I always thought bridges and roadways were Public Works. Anyway, it's a new one on me.
Yeah, well, this is actually classified as the entrance into the park, so it's the only way in that side is considered the bridge. So,
And what park's that, Frank?
excuse me.
What entrance, what park is it?
Well, the East Rowley landfill site,
Yeah.
so the park that's going to be
Is it
happening on this
used?
side. What's that?
Are we using it?
Well, no, not the East Rowley landfill side, but we are using the other side, the trails and everything that are still part of that actually, yeah. So, and it goes up the top, we're using the parking lot that's part of the landfill site, so we're working, that's another project that we're working on, the landfill site.
Yeah.
That was handed back
Going
to
on
us.
for 20 years.
It's gonna be probably going on long after Nancy and I are gone, probably. But anyway, so that's one. Then we're just small repairs happening at Simmons and small repairs happening at Cody Banks. The city central field netting replacement has been done.
Okay.
So at Central 2 and also the repairs to Central 1, so the netting looks great. Playground equipment, we're in the process of working on installs there and things are moving along. Nancy will provide for our next meeting, we'll have a sort of where we're at and where all the playgrounds are. But things are moving along with that.
Okay.
Confederation Landing upgrades right now. Nancy and Dean are working on the actual brick repair work, and we're working on a couple other projects as well, looking into possible design for a washroom facility that could be put down there, and some other repairs work that has to happen down further on the actual towards the water.
Did the committee request looking at a washroom facility down there?
That has been something we've been asked to do in Confederation Landing, so we are looking into now.
Who asked?
What's that?
Did we ask?
Yeah.
It was actually discussed in
When
the committee.
we were talking about, and also at council when we talked about paying the fee for the washrooms and whether it'd be more efficient to have our own place
To
or
have our
staff
own
or
washrooms.
searching that out.
Well, I hope we're gonna do a cost analysis, because you know what? The last thing you wanna see is a building, in around Confederation Landing. I mean,
So that's what we're doing here right now. We're looking
well,
at it.
but we're not gonna do a cost analysis, right?
So that's the reason why we're hiring a company to do a design, where it'll possibly, location of it possibly go, what the cost would be, opinion of
Because,
possible cost.
because it's still gonna cost, Peter, as you know, from an operational perspective, it's still gonna cost to have someone clean that washroom all day and all evening. So, I know there's some concerns about the cost with our current arrangement, but I think for the most part, and Nancy, you'll attest to this, over the last couple of years, we haven't got the complaints, have we?
No.
Right? Prior to that, we did get the complaints, and we made the adjustment. I know the cost was increased, but I gotta tell you, up until 2 and 3 years ago, and Jackie will attest to this, I mean, we were getting calls continuously. I mean, whether it was being approached down in that venue, or phone calls or emails, but we haven't, the last couple of years, those calls and those concerns haven't been aired. So I just want to bring caution here.
We're just following council's direction. We'll
I
get
don't
the
remember
information.
council making that.
We'll get the information, and council ultimately will make the final decision.
And cost analysis, right?
Yeah,
Cost will be there.
that's all it was, yeah.
So that's for this, what we're getting a possible design, what it could look like, an opinion on probable cost, because our biggest issue a lot of times is we throw a number out there, $100,000 is going to cost. We don't know it's going to cost $100,000.
That's right.
We
We get someone to actually do a design in the area, what it's going to look like, and then we look at other costs. Well, maybe there's funding opportunities out
Yeah.
there, those kind of things. So
It was just a cost analysis that we're asking
it's to get what it would look like. 'Cause
Yeah.
we
And where are you
really
gonna put
appreciate-
I don't know.
How it affects the ambiance and the aesthetics.
That is what we're looking in,
Right?
part of the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like any project we do, we want to make sure it fits into the location.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kelly is right, because I know that one of the councillors did address it. It was live, and he was followed up by some questions of a patron, or not a patron, but one of the owners down at Peaks Key.
The guy
So-
was instrumental.
Yeah, so it was talked about. And in terms of the relationship, Nancy, that relationship with Peaks Key and Parks and Recreation goes back to 2000. Because I think our first payment was back in 2001,
Yeah, that's it.
for $5,000.
There's also the venue in Founders Hall.
Right.
New venue, yes.
So I mean, they have washrooms in there too. So we should also be able to encourage our constituents to be able to use that facility, because we are a partner with the Port Authority, right? Port Authority rents that facility out. So there's also another option. So Frank, please take that into consideration when you're doing your analysis. There's also Founders Hall and the washroom facilities in there. That's another option.
And I think, Frank, I made this suggestion before, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Dave McKenzie did a report to improve the Charlottetown events grounds, and it looked at not building, but buying the shipping containers, how they convert those shipping
Yeah.
containers into washrooms. That's part of his report, if you want to get a
Yeah.
hold of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, they used him at the Shellfish Festival one year, didn't they?
No.
No. They use, there's one down at the Merchant Man. If you look at
Big
the,
tent.
Frank,
I mean,
if
the
you look at the
washrooms.
Merchant Man
the
outdoor
washrooms.
patio, they have one
Yeah.
of those shipping containers that's.
I do.
Okay.
Sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
That's part of the analysis, Your Worship.
Okay, Bob, did you have a question?
No, I didn't. Much sorry about that.
Okay, no problem.
So I'll just give a quick remaining projects here. So the Wrights Creek Andrews Pond, we're working on that. We're just waiting for getting access to across a portion of the land, and then we'll hopefully finish up those trails this year. The Hermitage Creek Trail upgrades, we're going to be sending out an RFQ in the very near future to be able to award that work. And then the platform replacement, I've been in communication on sort of looking at what we're going to do with that to replace the old platform that's by the rural there. And
So what's that, I'm sorry, Frank, what's that called, in front of Tremploy?
it's Hermitage Creek.
Hermitage Creek, so we're doing work there,
Yeah.
We're doing the trail.
we're doing the trail,
And the
and then the platform.
We're looking into that. We have some money here. We have to see how far the money goes. So
As you know, I did bring in one day concerns about droppings from the geese and the ducks, and that
We
great
signed
big,
that
that
already.
big goose. Anyway, and then of course the state of the deck itself. So we have a lot of seniors that go down there and utilize that facility. So I think the replacement would be welcomed by the residents and by the seniors that go there. That's a nice quiet area. They get to enjoy that scenery and they look forward to it. So I think that's a real good investment and a welcome expansion, or not expansion, but whole new construction there. I think they'd be very pleased.
Yeah, so no, so we're working towards that. Like I said, right now we're getting the RFQ sent out, and then we're working on the platform replacement. It's going to be a different type, but it's not going to be the same type. We're looking at a different type.
You're not making it smaller.
So we're looking at a different type and a different layout design. So it's operational. So we'll come up once we come up with the design and whatnot that works. We'll run it by you, kind of
Okay,
thing.
just as long as it's not smaller.
We'll be working with a design that works in the actual pond.
Okay.
So and we'll bring it. Well, I'll make sure I run it by you before we.
Okay, thank you.
It's going to be, okay, so then the next thing we're working on the Winslow Soccer Complex irrigation. We've been working on getting some quotes around that, and we're hoping to be able to partnership with the club on doing irrigation at one field, potentially more, but hopefully one field for sure. And then the beach volleyball courts, we've just got the okay from the committee that Simmons is going to be the preferred location, so Nancy will now contact a company to do a design and do up a request for a tender or quote, whatever we feel necessary to get that out there. Our anticipation would be get it constructed this fall, as we're working towards as well. And then the outdoor rink is coming near completion, hopefully within the next week or so. There was a few delays with regards to electrical and everything, but we're hoping that's going to be up and going.
I want to just stop you there,
And
Frank, if you don't mind. When we approved that expenditure, the consensus was in council, that was going to be the blueprint, that was going to be the model for outdoor rinks across this city. So it's great that, we've gone back to funding realignment in the Parks and Recreation budget, and I'd like to get a true cost at a later date. But I just want to make it clear that what we're seeing out there in Hillsborough Park is going to be consistent right across the city. That's what we all agreed to, right, gentlemen? Yeah. That's what we agreed to. So I want to make that clear. I want to make it duly noted that facility will be the blueprint, the model, whatever call it, whatever describe it, whatever way you want. But that's what we're going to be doing as we move forward, right?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair. What we agreed to first was a splash pad, but then it was switched before the budget meeting. So now that we have something in place, right, which I'm assuming it'll have lights too, Frank?
Oh, yeah.
yes, we're
That's the square garden.
It's like I said, we've modeled it after the East Royalty outdoor rink. Only made improvements to meet current standards.
And just keep in mind that the boards at the East Link Center, when they're replaced, I spoke to Mike White, and hopefully they'll find some storage for them, because they could be used down the road for an outdoor rink too.
Yes, there is, and they can be used. They have to be modified with regards to it. So that's the whole thing. Is we looked at that for this option here as well. So that is something we will keep in mind.
Frank, if you don't, just one further question on that. When we're constructing these, what we had out in Hillsborough Park, is that NHL size?
No, it's not NHL size. We can't fit an NHL size rink in a community or a neighborhood park. Like we work
200
within,
feet by 85.
Yeah,
Just ask the question.
Yeah, no. So what we
I
work.
work strive for the specifications.
Yeah, so we work. So the rink in Hillsborough is the same size as East Royalty, and that has worked out really well. That rink has proven success. And so you have to work within the actual space you're working in, and it takes
But there is
a large footprint.
Yeah. But there is a possibility where the land provides the opportunities there to construct an NHL size.
But we only have, if you had the kind of, outdoor plant to allow you to have ice for longer, but you only have ice for 8 weeks. So you have to look at the value of the land for 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And if you could put it beside an indoor rink, which they do in Toronto, and then they have used the plant and used the Zamboni to have an outdoor rink.
That's a good point, Nancy.
It is a very good use of resources.
Yeah, they do in Moncton too.
That's a good
They
point.
do in,
Yeah.
so I think that it's reasonable to think about those things if we could take advantage of potential future builds.
Yeah, there's no rink in Moncton. Oh, sorry, Your Worship. There's no rink in Moncton. Remember the Oval?
Yeah.
Have you seen
No,
it?
it's nice.
I mean, the Zamboni is out there.
So, Mr. Chair, just to be consistent, if we're looking at this model from Hillsborough Park go to Mulberry Park or out to Winslow, we're using the same size.
It's
the space is there.
Yeah, the whole thing is that the space is there. It can be modified,
That
but the
can be
same.
modified, but we're talking about the structure. We're talking
The
about what's
design,
underneath.
the design.
The amenities.
Yeah.
We're talking the amenities, but, if there's an opportunity to make it even bigger, if the land is there, why wouldn't we take advantage of it? Anyway, thank you, Frank.
So that'll be future capital
Yeah.
budgets discussions.
Oh, yeah.
So the last thing that we're actually just here is a few other things. There's just one more, the Victoria Park batting cage. We are working on that. We had to wait till City Diamond was done before we could actually do it, so that'll be done this fall. But
And Frank, I have one thing on the Queen Elizabeth Park, and sorry, I slipped my mind. They're not putting lights down there, are they?
No.
no.
Good.
Where?
At the Queen Elizabeth Park, no, somebody, like the 2 or 3 residents asked the last 2 or 3 days, I don't know if they heard a rumor that there's lights going on there, I said, no.
For what?
Oh, I don't know.
Field lights.
Field lights for
ball-
soccer
for ball,
or ball or rugby or anything like that, and I said, no, not as I know. The only thing we're doing right now is the pathway, right?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Frank, anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, under the lighting for City Diamond, what was the final cost for that, Frank? Do you have an estimate?
It's very close to what's budgeted there. Where are we at here right now?
Was it
Just-
3/4?
Just let me, where
of
are
a
we at?
million?
So we have 330,000.
That's our share?
No, that was the overall,
That's
cost of the project. but
Purchase of infrastructure and
there,
installation.
it probably came slightly, I think, with our engineering design, I believe, I'd have to look back at the resolution, but it was slightly over that, but it was very, very close to what we had budgeted.
It's in the ballpark.
And that is, it's in the ballpark. But it was 1/3,
The city
that was
or
split
the
between
Memorial
2 other
Field?
partners.
Yeah. So the lighting is LED lighting?
LED
yeah.
lighting.
Yeah.
First field in Charlestown with LED
You know what?
lighting.
There's only 2 ball diamonds in the province. There's ours in City Diamond and down at, Cardigan.
Cardigan.
That has LED lighting?
Yes, sir.
And Frank, just on the Ellen's QE Park pathway, I've taken that pathway, and when you get up to the ball field in the north end, it ends. Are we doing a whole loop?
Yeah, whole loop.
There will be a loop.
Yeah.
The loop was there, it's
It
going
died.
over. It's
Yeah.
going over.
But the loop it'll go round, it'll be,
And go up to the building, and so they can use the washrooms,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then come to the parking lot.
yeah, so Nancy, the reason I say that, because what was proposed here at our first presentation by the Charlottetown Rugby, where they want to put their facility, it will run parallel to that pathway, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
That would be
Yeah.
that's what we discussed initially, yeah.
Yeah, so make sure that they are with the understanding that this pathway is part of the infrastructure for QE Park.
I think it was mentioned, I think that was mentioned at the pathway because that was something they knew we were in the works with,
Yeah.
so.
And, Mr. Chair, under the Wrights Creek Bridge, did we, who's the engineering firm? Is it EXP out of Moncton
Sorry, which one, sorry?
doing the Wrights Creek Bridge replacement? I call it the Acadian Bridge replacement.
Yeah, no.
Who's
so
the engineer? Is it
yeah.
EXP?
No, it's Harborside.
They are doing,
That I'm working with for the preliminary design.
are they running into issues with the site itself, or what's the problem with it?
They're working on the design right now. By the time we've got to that level where we could actually get them working design, so now they're working on it. It's going to take
Because you won't be able to do it this year.
So we're working on the timeline. I've already been in consultation with the funders and whatnot, and they realize the project is a more complicated project. It involves environmental permits that will be required. So it's right now they're working on the preliminary, so we can look at options and then decide which direction we're going to go in for sure before we get the next step. But it won't be done this year.
No,
and
yeah,
they're
because
quite
Frank,
aware of it. But we
it's
can
hard
have
to
a lot-
it's hard to get a permit to build any bridges for water courses at this time of the year, because DFO now only has one office, that's in Moncton. And they're looking at all applications for bridge construction or construction going across waterways for the province of New Brunswick and the province of Prince Edward Island. Frank, just on the other bridge, you mentioned the Wrights Creek, which is, I'd say, the Wrights Creek on the north end bridge, and Andrews Pond. What bridge are you talking about?
I didn't
You
mention
said-
the bridge, sorry. I said
You said
Wrights.
Andrews Pond.
Andrews Pond.
Is that
Trail.
the same bridge that we're talking about, the Acadian Drive Bridge?
No.
No,
No.
so So Andrews Pond is just...
I know where it is.
Yeah, so Andrews Pond, so the trail development that we're doing out there,
Right.
it's trail development.
Right.
So we still have an aspect of the trails that still have to happen, like a component of it that was
Right.
not finished. So we're working on that. We're also working on a few other areas where...
Are you working with environment sustainability on that too?
No, this is we've been doing this for 10 years or
Yeah.
more, Nancy and
Yeah.
I, and we've been working on trail development out there around Andrews Pond. So this is finishing off what was done last year. We're waiting on a piece of land that we want to have in our ownership before we put the trail on it. So once we have that, then we'll finish off the next.
I'm just trying to visualize it, Nancy.
It's just
You know where the
a footbridge.
Wrights Creek Bridge is at now on St. Peter's Road? You have Andrews Pond on the north side, and on the, Andrews Pond is actually
You're
divided
talking
in
about
two.
Acadian Bridge, you mean?
No, the
No,
Acadian
it's
Bridge,
talking about Andrews,
not the
that's-
Acadian, I'm talking about at Wrights' Bridge on St. Peter's Road.
Okay. The highway bridge?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the bridge we're
No,
talking
no,
about?
we're
The
talking
An-
about a footbridge. No, the bridge you're thinking about, that he mentioned was that Frank McCauley, to go across the swale.
No, I know that one.
No,
it's
the
just-
bridge I'm talking about is off Acadian Drive. That was the bridge, that bridge project.
That goes into Andrews Pond.
No,
So
it's-
we have nothing to do with Andrews Pond. Like Andrews Pond is a separate project. That is trail development. Trail development around that.
Acadian Bridge is the one you're thinking about by the trailer park.
No, I know where that is. I call that the Acadian Bridge. You guys keep calling that the Wrights Bridge.
It's referred to as what? That's what John Andrews has.
Okay,
So it's considered
okay.
Wrights Bridge. It goes into East Raleigh landfill site area.
Okay.
So
So
that
the
is-
pathway that we're working on, the active transportation
There's
path,
one little bridge that's already been built, and it's a wooden bridge.
is that,
No, so
That's a different bridge?
You're talking about a pathway. That's a total different. That's active transportation. That's the one that sustainability is working on. This is
that has nothing to do with you?
No, nothing to do with us. Ours is to do with around Andrews Pond. It's a natural pond. The
That's
actual
right.
pond now belongs to the city, and we have parkland that goes all around the pond. So we've been developing over the last park system over the last.
Yeah, the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so is it the Andrews Pond where John Andrews' house is, or is it the pond of the both?
Both.
No. It's
Well, it's across St. Peter's Road,
Yeah, so
Right.
it's the one on the other side.
and
It's
Ginger, not Ginger McKay, Bobby McKay.
And
We were working with Bobby McKay.
John Andrews still owns the other one. So the other one is still John Andrews on the other side.
Yeah.
It's on the other side. That's where we.
Okay, Bob, on the Bobby McKay side.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
Bobby Messina.
so we were working with Bobby McKay, Ann Barber, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, Ann Barber. I think we've done a lot of work here in the last 2 or 3 years. We started that process, and once again, it's a phased-in approach, and I think the residents, they're enjoying it, they're utilizing it, and
Mr. Chair, I sit on environment and sustainability, and we got an active transportation pathway that we're developing along the bypass, right?
Right.
Right, and that's going to intersect with the Andrews Pond development,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to find out is the province is looking at building a pedestrian underpass to go from one side to the other side.
pedestrian underpass?
Yes.
Where?
Going in off the pathway that we're building, right?
Yeah.
That'll take you up to the Rotary, St. Peter's Road and the Ontario Road. When you veer off right towards the Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's gonna go down so far, and in order for cyclists, walkers, people with baby carriages, they're looking at an underpass. Correct?
That's my understanding. Is I've heard
Yeah,
that.
so Frank, I'm just trying to
I
find
didn't hear
out,
that.
who does that fall under?
So that's
Environment?
so it's actually it's the province that's taking the lead.
I
on
know,
that. Yeah,
but how
so
does it intersect with us?
So sustainability is the lead on. No,
I know, I'm not getting frustrated with you, Frank.
No, on active transportation. So they lead on the active transportation. So they would involve us, the fact, because it's going to connect potentially to our 2 parks and recreation.
Correct.
trails. They would involve public works.
So-
So they're the sort of clearinghouse that works with the other 2 departments.
And all I want to find out, Mr. Chair, is that, and I know Frank and Nancy and Chris and the whole staff, it's just difficult to find out, an active transportation pathway to me is a parks issue,
Of course it is.
right?
Yeah.
So does it eventually come back, when we develop that pathway, Frank, will it go over to you?
No, so the biggest thing, the comment is, the reason why it went to sustainability is because they've been able to obtain funding,
Yeah.
but also they're the coordinator, because oftentimes active transportations fall on public works land, falls on
Yeah.
parks and recreation land, or it could be even a provincial government or whatever, so they coordinate it. So if it's on an actual street right away, which this one would be, it could be Public Works. But if that's a provincial road, it could be owned by the province and maybe Public Works maintains it. That's the relationship we have right now, where Public Works will maintain, like say, active transportation pathway along Riverside Drive that runs there. They look after that one that runs up around. And then roads that go out by the hospital are owned by the province, but Public Works maintains them. We work with them as well to provide garbage cans, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But when they're in a park, it's very straightforward. We manage them and look after them within parks and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Mr. Chair, look, it's getting complicated with, like, the active transportation pathways. I'm a big promoter of them, but I'm just trying to figure out, because we did a tour of the new proposed mental health acute care campus.
Yeah.
There'll be about 85 acres of land to be developed. They're looking at a trail going around there too.
Wow.
So there's all this going on, and this is all happening, and I'm just trying to figure out, how are we keeping the parts together or juggling the 3 or 4 balls? So that we,
Number one, I had no idea that they're talking about doing an under.
it's all preliminary right now.
It's all preliminary. Well, it amazes me how there's enthusiasm for that, and yet when I proposed the underpath, University Avenue, where you got 1,000 people a day trying to cross there, you have some that don't think it's a good idea, or they try to sabotage it. It never ceases to amaze me.
Anyway, guys, come on, we're going to hear all
Okay,
afternoon.
anyways, so,
Yeah.
Frank, I'll follow up on environmental standards.
yeah, so
Okay.
the answer to the question is that it's under environmental standard. They coordinate active transportation between the other departments and involve police and whoever else kind of thing. So that's what it is from the city, and it's worked really well. We've had a very coordinated process where we meet regularly within the city, and then also we're aware of what's happening.
Right. Well, once again, it amazes me how some venues are enthusiastically supported in one part of the city, and then they're sabotaged in the other parts of the city. I just wanted to bring that up.
Mr. Chair, the last question is, or the last issue, the Winslow Soccer Complex, Nancy, there have been drainage, and I brought this to Frank's attention, maybe your attention, the drainage issues on the west side that go on to Westway. Have we worked anything out with?
I met with Public Works and they're working on something.
They are, okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Anything else under open session, Frank?
No.
Okay. Motion to move into closed session.
Just before we introduction to new business,
Oh, go ahead.
could I just ask
Yeah.
if we could look at this at the next agenda?
Yeah.
That's the Fort Edward property where we have the cannons and the battery. Could we just put that on the agenda? Like, what are we doing? What's our future plans?
Well, there's an organization that was mandated.
Was.
Yeah, but that's Dr. David Weber. I think he's since deceased.
No, but there's other people involved as well.
Ray Brow.
Well, there's more than Ray Brow. There's some others.
We haven't heard from them in years.
No, but I mean, that was all the reincarnation of what was there, 70 or 80 years ago.
Well, could we find out where we are? What's the status? Like, where can we use the bat?
We repaired the fence.
Yeah.
We
We've done
repaired
that
the
in
fence,
Patriot.
we put, we repaired the building.
Who's responsible for the British flag that was up there? Is that our flag?
That was theirs. We couldn't, with the wooden flagpole, we couldn't lower it in the winter. And so it was historically accurate, so I don't know what they did in the winter, but ours froze solid and we couldn't move it up.
Can I just put that on the agenda?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
That's it, thank you, sir.
Okay. Motion to move in closed session as per section 119, 1 subsection E of the PEI Municipal Government Act.
Sure. I'll make the motion. Second.
Okay. Adjournment of public session.